So we are live now. Hi, I'm Metta Spencer. Today we're going to have a really thrilling occasion because I get to be with 4 of my friends, and they're scattered around the world, but they're very dear to me, all of them. Let's go from on my thumbnails from right to left. At the top of my screen, I see my friend Konstantin Samoilov, who is in Tashkent, and he is a Russian who has fled from Russia in order to keep from being sent to Ukraine to kill Ukrainians. But he has the most wonderful daily streaming show, which I recommend highly. It's the only thing since Northern Exposure that I watched every day of the week without fail, because it's such an interesting thing. So you want to look up his streaming show, which is called Inside Russia. Is that the right word for it, Konstantin?
Thank you very much, Metta. Yes, it is absolutely right. Inside Russia. Thank you for such introduction. Thank you.
Okay, and next is Andrei Kamenchikov. Andrei is also somebody who's left Russia, but he left a little earlier than the others. He is a dual Russian-American citizen, but he has been living in Kyiv for the last several years as a coordinator of a network of Eastern European peace groups. But right now he's on the road, traveling around Central Asia, trying to put together a network of the Russian diaspora, these largely composed of the men such as Konstantin and such as Alexei, who have fled Russia in order to avoid being conscripted and sent to fight in the war. So, hello, Andrei. How are you? Andrei, say something again.
Yes, thank you. Good to see you all.
Yeah. Andrei, you're in Astana, Kazakhstan now, is that right?
Not in Astana. I'm in a city called Taldykurgan at the moment.
Oh,
But I'll be in Almaty in a couple of days.
okay. Okay, and in Warsaw is Alexei Prokorenko. Alexei was an interpreter in good morning or afternoon or whatever it is for you. And it's evening, I think.
It's evening.
Alexei is he has many languages, and he was an interpreter in Moscow until September when the mobilization began. And so he went first to Istanbul for a couple of months, and then to Warsaw, where he's settling for the time being, as much as anybody can settle that way. And here in Toronto with me is another dear old friend, is Doug Saunders. Doug is the international affairs main honcho at the Globe and Mail. And he's been doing, and the reason I wanted him to be with me today is that he's writing a book about migration, and particularly about the plight of migrants who are unsettled. They're on the road, they don't know where they're going, they're sort of perched here or there, traveling around trying to get on their feet. And I think that is the situation of the other 3 men, the Russians who have left Russia and are trying to figure out where do we go from here. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Metta. Good to be with you. And
I want you to take over most of the questioning, because you probably, in the course of your research on migration, you probably have ideas and thoughts and questions that occur to you that simply wouldn't occur to me. So it's all yours.
well, thank you, Metta. And look, it's really great to get the 3 of you together, because you're encircling Russia in a lot of different countries and situations and time zones. So, so I appreciate your logistical efforts and late hours in doing this. Almost everyone I know in Russia who is, democracy minded or university educated or so on, it seems now is living abroad in Europe or Asia, except for a couple who are being very quiet in Russia. And I think since over the last year, since Putin's second invasion of Ukraine, we've seen two groups of people attempting to live in exile. The first is what is the democracy-minded, educated middle class, you could say, many of whom, including people like Andre here, have been living abroad since after the 2014 invasion and so on. So this was an amplification of that. And we have another group who are attempting exile or refugee status or asylum, who are a less middle class, less educated group of people who are mainly young men who fear the being recruited into the military, and who maybe because they oppose Putin's ideas and means, or maybe because they simply fear for their lives, realistically speaking, but one way or another don't want to support the war and are attempting to leave. So one of the things we should talk about today is the question of whether there should be refugee status for this second group. But first, I'd like to go around and hear from each of you about your own circumstances. What moment caused you to realize you had to leave Russia? What it took to get out of Russia and into another country, and how that is similar to other people in Russia who may be seeking to do the same thing. What are the challenges? Who shall we start with? Let's start with Konstantin, who's up the latest and who's in Uzbekistan now. What did it take for you not to live in Russia?
We made a decision not to live in Russia, me and my wife, shortly after the invasion. I would say in March of the last year. I did leave Russia for about a month. I lived here in Uzbekistan last April. Then I returned simply to too many things to finish off, to take care of. And we were preparing our departure. And what really was the last kick in the butt for me was the mobilization. It didn't change my attitude towards war, okay, but it expedited, so to speak. I made a pledge to be active, be heard, right on the day one of that, 24th of February of 2022. And well, basically, after 21st of September, I realized that at any moment they can knock on my door, and they probably would knock on my door at first because I was being loud, and I left. Was a very spontaneous decision. I decided to leave around early October, but then my wife insisted, and I had an insight, and I bought another ticket. The process was very painful, it's really hard to explain. I'm writing a book about this experience as well. And really, the book is not even enough, okay, let alone a few phrases. It's like all of a sudden you make a decision to leave your life behind. Everything that you have, everything you have worked for, basically your life, everything and everybody, okay? And I had 36 hours. What was happening in Russia, it's really hard to explain. I actually made a movie, a video, so people can see it with their own eyes. I haven't released it yet. I don't feel it's the right time yet, but it was an exodus. There was tons of Russian men, grown men, not young men, mostly in their 30s and 40s and even 50s. Okay, and many, very many, I think majority, not fearing to be drafted, to be mobilized and to be sent to Ukraine, not fearing for their lives, but most were in my position. So, they were heating up and finally they boiled. So the airports were overflowing with men, women, their wives were seeing them off, kids, everyone was crying. Men were not happy, depressed, and no tickets out of Russia. I ended up paying $5,200 for my ticket. I flew to a small village, small town in Tajikistan, Ujan. That's the only place I could secure a ticket. And then I basically walked over the Uzbek border. I took a cab to the border, and the entire plane that landed was full of people just like me. We all went to Uzbekistan, okay? We all took cabs, and we all crossed the border by foot at the same time. And in the following days, I was seeing just this unheard of situation before. I think it's the same thing that was happening 100 years ago when the white emigration happened out of Russia when Bolsheviks took over, kind of the same thing. So the rest is history, So this is my story.
Andrei Kamenshikov, you have you had to leave earlier. You were involved with the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. I don't know if that was classified as an NGO in Russia, but certainly things became dangerous for people involved with such organizations. Certainly after 2008, but you end up leaving 2014 or 2015 for Kiev at first. And now you're in Kazakhstan. Tell me about what moment made you have to leave, and then out of the frying pan and into the fire, I guess, what made you have to leave again?
You're
in Kiev now.
muted.
I'm on a visit here in Kazakhstan, but my home today is Kiev. As for my move out of Moscow, see, my situation is a bit unique because I always had this dual background. I was actually born in New York, and one of my parents American, one is Russian. So I had this very peculiar situation from all my life. And even though I spent most of my life, I actually lived most of my life in Moscow. And for over 20 years, I led a small nonprofit organization in Russia that was doing work on basically peace building and human rights, humanitarian work, focusing primarily on various aspects of peace building in different areas of conflict or potential conflict in different parts of the former USSR, but mainly in Russia itself, in the North Caucasus regions of Russia. What affected me was that as the climate, the political climate in the country began to change in a negative direction, there was this talk about, the subversive role of foreign funded NGOs and all that. And in my particular case, because of my dual background, I realized at some point that I was becoming a liability even to my friends, because our organization was basically put in a situation where we couldn't effectively work. Because as a peace building organization, our goal was not just to try to expose some human rights violations, but it was set to actually try to engage in various programs that would require the cooperation of, for example, different kinds of officials on the local level. We actually worked a lot with police in some of the areas where we operated. And as the climate started changing, our partners or potential partners would become very suspicious and very hesitant to work with us. And so we couldn't really continue this work. And I started getting information that it was not just because of, the general attitude toward NGOs, but also was because of my personal background. passports, and a US passport was not something that was very.
Move,
popular at the time.
Andrew, move forward to the mic, please. Yeah.
Yes,
I
so-
think you want to say that because of your dual citizenship as a US citizen.
yes, that was definitely a factor. And so I realized how things were going. So we finally made a decision that we formally closed our organization after over 20 years of work. We closed our organization, our profit group in Moscow. And it's interesting because just like 2 weeks after we formally closed our organization, the office where we used to work was visited by representatives of the Ministry of Justice that were trying to pinpoint what these foreign agent organizations are. So we were on the list, but we closed just like 2 weeks before they were going to start working with us and making a case out of our organization. So in a sense, what helped me is that besides the work with my own small nonprofit, I also was involved with this network, this global partnership network that has been in existence since 2003. And due to this side of my activities, I had lots of contacts with like-minded groups in other countries, especially in Ukraine. And of course, in the situation where the war in Ukraine began in 2014, I felt that there should be a role for me there. So I was basically faced with an option, either moving to the US or trying to move somewhere closer where my experience, that was just about all my experience was in this field, I felt was more relevant. So I made the decision to move to Kiev because, well, there were a number of reasons. But one of them was that I felt that, I don't have to really start from scratch because, again, I have contacts and my knowledge and my experience could be useful. So I have moved to Kiev since, and I am living in Kiev now for about 8 years now. And so right now I'm in Central Asia, but I'm not, I didn't emigrate here. I'm visiting here, working on different ideas.
Thank you. And Alexei Prokorenko, you have the additional risk that I think you're younger than the rest of us. And I don't know your exact age, but I think you were closer to the target age for the first attempt to enlist soldiers into the Russian military. And that threat, among others, I think caused you to, it sounds like an old James Bond movie, first to Istanbul and then to Warsaw, where you are now. I'm sure it wasn't quite as adventurous and fun as that, though.
Well, I'm 39 years old, so I look a bit younger, but in fact,
now they're drafting everybody, aren't they?
They're drafting, they don't care. Even if someone is 60, there have been cases when people were drafted in spite of myopia, in spite of diabetes, in spite of old age, relatively old age. I mean, even after 60. There have been cases reported of such absolutely intolerable events. I will start probably with saying that I've been supporting Ukraine for quite a long time, at least since the Orange Revolution of 2004, when I was very sympathetic with the sentiment of the Ukrainians to get to secure a free election. When I was in Kiev visiting in 2009, I deliberately chose a hotel on the Maidan Square. I didn't know back then that it would be right in the middle between the two Maidans. 2009. I mean, chronologically, it was right in the middle. Then, of course, I was very, very, very sympathetic with the second Maidan, with the Euromaidan, with people. It was, for me, it was a sacred prayer, an agora, which was a place where people were praying, and where they were sacrificing their own lives for dignity, for democracy, for truth, for such universal values which are above everything, for their conscience, whatever. And then, of course, when the war broke out, I was, in 2014, I was trying to look for ways how I could help Ukraine, but I didn't really invent something meaningful. But when the active phase, as they call it, started in 2022 on February 24. I will never forget that day, because that was the day when I realized that everything I had been living for, I had been working for, both personally, professionally, and otherwise, all had been done in vain, because I, as an interpreter, I had been building bridges between the West and Russia, and on that day, on that terrible morning, I woke up to realize that everything had been ruined for me, and a totally new life started. I started to do something to stop the war. I didn't take part in the protests, because I soon realized that you would just be caught by the police, by the overwhelming majority of the police. 2 million people in Russia, 2 million soldiers of the so-called internal troops, perfectly equipped, perfectly armed. So you just whatever you go to the Red Square in the center of Moscow, and whatever you say, even if you say you support Putin, you get just grabbed, and you get arrested, and you pay effectively some kind of 500 euros or $500, which then are allocated to the war. I didn't want that, so I chose another strategy. First of all, I made stickers, both small, like to have it on my palm, and then stick them in the metro, in public transit, wherever people are present. So if anyone has doubts about their position, whether they're alone in their non-acceptance of the war, if they see such a sticker, they will be sure that they're not alone. And it might make like some people think about a different stance that they could take. Even if they supported the war, they might think twice about it, that there is still another group of people who thinks differently. Then I made big stickers, which I used to attach in less populous, less frequented places, such as house entrances, where I would not be caught before I do everything that I had planned. So such was my guerrilla stickers story. Apart from that, I tried to talk to people wherever, in a drugstore, in a pharmacy, in a shop, wherever I bumped into people other than my family, because my family supports, they share my views. I tried to make people talk, and all that I was facing was fear, extreme fear, to just talk about this. Mm-hmm. Which is quite partly understandable, because, for example, a shop assistant, they will have to work in that shop. I will come and go, and they will have to work. Probably the atmosphere of fear, that's understandable for me. And then when the mobilization was announced on September 22, it was Wednesday. I don't have to look it up in the calendar. because I remember that day vividly. So it had taken the government 1 day to pass all the laws concerning the mobilization, and so the mobilization was announced on Wednesday. I was shocked, and it took me about 2 days to understand what's going on. Like it's not a joke, and they were grabbing people, everyone they could get hold of. And I was a lieutenant of the Russian army, a reserve lieutenant. I had attended ROTC, which back in my day was thought as the only viable way to dodge the draft. So you get an officer's degree and you don't get drafted, and that's the only way why I attended that course. But as a lieutenant, I was subject to conscription, which is why I realized that I had to leave. On Friday, September 23, I spent the whole day from dawn to dusk, trying to find any tickets at any price whatsoever, to just jumping between different websites selling tickets to Central Asia, to small townlets like Hujan, like others. But I was not lucky, and I went to bed on Friday being prepared to drive my car to Kazakhstan. It would take me a couple of days to drive my car to Kazakhstan just to get across the border, whatever. Because if we all remember, there were so-called referendums at the end of September, and there were fears that the borders would be closed after those referendums on September 28 or 29. And one of the fears were that I would stay behind the Iron Curtain, which I would not like at all. And then I got up on Saturday. I got up at 4 a.m. just to buy a ticket, and I was lucky. I secured the last ticket for $1,300 to Istanbul for the evening of Wednesday, September 25. So I had exactly 36 hours to pack my things, to pack my whole life into the bag and into the backpack as well, and to leave and to say goodbye to my family, to my mother, to my pets. We had broken up with my girlfriend after the war broke out, and so I didn't have a large family back then. And so it was interesting because our Russian banking cards did not work anywhere except Russia. So I had like a big number of bills in euros and dollars, like something like 9,000, close to the limit of $10,000 that you could have with you. And so I flew to Istanbul, where I spent 2 months. You can only spend 2 months in Turkey without getting a residential permit. During that time, I managed to secure a Polish humanitarian visa as a dissident. And since the end of November, I've been living in Warsaw, which is quite a happy time for me, I must confess.
Thank you. And look, we're all grateful that all three of you were able to get out, but also saddened that it's necessary for democratic-minded Russians to be living in exile. And I want to ask about this, about to what extent we should be encouraging and formalizing exile and refuge of Russians. Of course, there are a lot of institutions of what you might call democratic Russia in exile right now. The major independent newspapers and television outlets tend to be operating out of the Baltic states. now with a little bit of friction, but generally allowed to do their thing. There's a group of Russians in exile in Warsaw. I don't know if you know them, Alexei, who have attempted to draft a new constitution document for a post-Putin Russia when it occurs. And of course, there are the initiatives that you're all involved in. However, Russians are not generally allowed to be accepted as refugees in the countries of the European Union, or even get tourist visas, which are a traditional way of beginning the asylum process. I'm affiliated with a think tank in Berlin, and last year when I asked people from European governments about this policy, the answers I got were either, well, we're trying to handle millions and millions of Ukrainian refugees right now, and it would be too awkward to have Russians mixed in with them. But also some of them said, well, we don't want to be draining Russia of all of the people who could be opposing Putin, and we want to make sure that the people who would be leading a Maidan moment in Moscow are inside Russia rather than outside, which this was before the draft really got going, but nevertheless, there is an attitude among some European countries that Russia becomes more dangerous if it loses all of its democracy-minded people, all of its educated middle class. So somewhere between those extremes, what should be done at this point? Should there be a move toward general acceptance of Russians in exile? Do there need to be more institutions and bodies to try to bring together democracy-minded Russians in exile? And what can we in the countries of North America and Europe do to make this possible? What needs to change? I don't know who we start with here.
May I start?
Please, Konstantin.
First of all, I would like to add a couple words to what Alexei just said. I was listening to him and I was reliving the experience because I was right there. I was doing the same thing. I was seeing the same people that you were seeing when you were getting out of Russia. It's still bleeding. Anyway, all right. This is what happened, and this is my thoughts, Doug, on what you've asked. It's not a simple answer to this question, right? Like yes or no. Now, since I am the very insider of this exile of Russians, this is what I think. First of all, when I got to Uzbekistan, I was not a novice in this country. I spent 2 years doing business here back in 2012. I am an entrepreneur and I've been in corporate business pretty much all my life, but also took a stint of starting my own high-tech startups, and one of them was here in Uzbekistan. So I have some experience. Once I crossed the border of Russia, I felt it was very ambiguous feeling. On one thing, it was a relief of getting outside of Russia, a relief of not being able to get mobilized and thrown to Ukraine with orders to kill Ukrainians, which I would never do anyway. I would probably end up in jail for that, but I wouldn't go to the front lines. On the other side, on the other hand, it was a very hard feeling of life is over. It's really hard to explain to you all if you haven't gone through this experience, okay? I get here and from morning till night, I just walk the streets back and forth, listening to music, trying to catch my breath, so to speak, trying to not to think about things because it felt so down. It was incredible. But then I noticed a very interesting thing. It's really easy to tell a Russian from a local by the way they dress, they act, especially the Russian that comes from Russia, the Russian guy. Usually, locals don't wear shorts, they wear pants, and the Russians from Moscow, St. Petersburg come out in bright clothing, you know, and look, you can spot them right away. And I saw thousands of Russians just like me, looking down, feeling sad, depressed, crushed, you know, and they were doing the same thing, walking around. It's just, I know Tashkent. I wasn't like looking around, and I wasn't trying to get my bank account, and they were, okay? So I saw thousands of people and tons of Russian cars with Russian license plates. And I decided to somehow to reach out to these people and try to help them. I started a community. I picked a cafe. I sat down and I started inviting everyone who wanted to show up for a coffee, to join me for a coffee. And I offered to buy coffee and like a porridge or eggs or something, breakfast basically. And at first there was no one, and then this thing took off, and a community started forming. Not just my community, not just the community that I started. I called my community Tashkent Breakfast Club, and I started inviting Russians, just like-minded Russians who fled the war, who, you know, with the attitude same as mine. And basically, it was good just to sit down and share thoughts with everyone. Just be around people like you was therapeutic, okay? So as a support group, that's how it started out. And then it started growing, and there were other groups, and there have been other groups growing in parallel. Okay, and right now in Tashkent, my estimation is about 30,000 Russian men. Quite a few women and children came. There were quite a few communities formed, families, you know, parents trying to take care of the kids, picking schools, sharing their experiences, recommending doctors and stuff like that. My community is about 400 people right now. Andre was visiting Tashkent, and I'm really honored that he joined us. He saw it with his own eyes. On weekends, we gather about 50 people, and on mornings, it's from 5 to 15 people usually, you know, they show up for breakfast. But our group, we have a Telegram channel, and there are about 7 or 8 Telegram channels and groups in Tashkent. So this is sort of a introduction, okay, to what you asked, Doug. What I have been seeing around me is quite an incredible picture. The Russians who left Russia, first of all, not one of them supports Russian government, okay? All are anti-war, all are pretty clear about their stance, and they are not afraid to share their opinions here in Tashkent once they're outside of Russia. Now, not all of them, I'd say minority, fled because they simply fear for their lives. There are people like that, but most fled because they couldn't take it any longer. And mobilization was the tipping point, okay? It was like kicking the butt, like I said earlier, just like it was for me. Many are active in some things that I rather not share here publicly, but they're doing things. Not, you know, I'd say quite a few. And all, absolutely all, are not even middle class. I'd say cream of the crop, professionals, engineers, medical doctors, teachers, professors from universities, Moscow State University, Moscow Energy University, you know, big universities, engineers, lots of businessmen, entrepreneurs, lots of people who used to work for themselves. Okay, lots of most, I'd say all have high education, and most all have had enough energy, enough courage, enough brains to get out of Russia. Okay, so this event became like a filter that filtered out people who are on my side right now, I guarantee you, if any country would take them, they would create value for the economy and for the society. A bunch of Russians, well, in my group, there are 400. I know them all personally because they showed up for breakfast at one point or another, And I know probably around 1,000 people because I constantly, speak to Russians here. They like come to me on the streets, start conversations. I attend different events and things like that. So I would say majority consider Uzbekistan a transit point, not a destination. And a lot have already gone. They left Uzbekistan. Not majority. Majority is still staying because it's really difficult. A lot want to go to different countries, European countries, North America, Canada, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, and with one desire: to work, to use skills, education, experience that they have in other countries. Okay, they want to work, they want to start companies, they want to pay taxes, they want to create value. And this is the two biggest thing we talk about at breakfast, at the meetings, is first is, of course, Ukraine. After a while, I figured about the new year, I figured getting Russians together is not enough. And I've made it my mission to locate Ukrainians who fled the war as well in Tashkent, and I have quite a few families, and I started inviting them to our gathering. So I basically tried to have people sit at one table and break bread, look at each other, from Russia, from Ukraine. And basically what we talk about is Russia and Ukraine situation, the war. And second is what to do next. And people, I have a couple attorneys here, Russian attorneys, couple local attorneys who help with visas. I have attorneys in Florida helping Russians that I recommend. And basically, everyone is trying to find the legal way how to move on and where to move on. And this is the biggest problem because we feel like, not angry, because we're not in a position to feel angry, okay? But we feel like it's unfair because what happens, Russian politicians who openly support war in Russian government, who openly support, who want destruction of Ukraine, they are welcomed in Europe. They can easily get visas, tourist visas. They have lots of money and they're public. They Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts, they go on live on Russian TV and say, oh, Ukraine must be destroyed, things like that. And I have examples of that. And then they have Schengen visas and they go to Italy, Venice for vacations. Their wives spend money, they take pictures, they post them on Instagram and things like that, And us, people who fled, who are sitting in Tashkent, not Tashkent, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, we're the same, okay? Our location doesn't change much. And Alexei sitting in Poland, but he's in the same shoes pretty much, right? And we feel like in order for us to, let's say, obtain American visa, that's nearly impossible. We must fly to some other countries. In order to get European visa, any European visa, we must go back to Russia because that's what European countries say. Hey, you know what? You're a Russian citizen, then you must apply for a visa in Russia. So none of us wants to go back to Russia, right? But we cannot apply here in Uzbekistan. Therefore, Europe is blocked off for us. To get to the United States, you need a visa to get there legally, or you have to go through Mexico, and some people have gone. I personally helped one of the kids to be extracted from Russia, and he bought a ticket here in Uzbekistan to fly to Mexico, and he crossed the border in El Paso, and he's seeking for political asylum right now. Okay, and I've heard people doing the same thing, but it's not. You can't do that like all of us. We can't. It's just selected few, and this is something I would hesitate to do myself because it's long and difficult process for myself, for my family, and things like that, But this is the situation right now. Tons of people, educated, smart, intellectually pleasing to talk to. Okay, Andrei was at our meeting, right, a few times. I would like to give you feedback about the International Tashkent Breakfast Club after I'm done. Would you please, Andrei? So lots of people who are a fantastic addition to any country, we're stuck here and we basically don't know what to do. Moreover, Uzbekistan is not too far from Russia. Kazakhstan is not too far. We are part of one country in the past, and the KGB services of all countries, they have connections. And if they want to extradite any one of us, peanuts, So I don't really feel safe in Uzbekistan, although it's much safer than in Russia, but not completely safe. And I'll just, before I'm done, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I'll give you an example of one guy. And this is just it's mind-blowing, okay? November, people show up for breakfast without me inviting them because it's word of mouth, it's getting spread. So we show up at 10:30 every day. So I show up and there's a guy, middle-aged guy, about 30s, sitting there, and he introduces himself. He's waiting for me, for all of us. And, he starts asking us, he said, we recently came, I would like to start a career as a software tester. Well, right there in one of our, like almost every morning, we had a guy.
Oh, phooey. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Well, we've lost him. Okay.
I'm sorry. Am I back?
Okay, good.
All right. So we have a guy who used to teach artificial intelligence at Skolkovo. Okay. We have a really, really experienced developer, another guy, and they're right there. We're having breakfast, right? So they start giving them advice on how to become a tester. And they basically lay out a roadmap in like 10 minutes. This is what we get to help to support each other, right? And then I asked him a question. I said, what do you do in your life? Like, why do you want to become a tester? He goes, I really want to go to either the United States or Canada. And that's the only way I know, testing. I said, well, okay, understood. But what do you do besides, what did you do in Russia? He goes, well, I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm like, my jaw dropped. I said, wait a second, you are a neurosurgeon and you want to become a tester? He goes, well, I figured if I build a career in testing, where about 3 years, I get to the United States, I'll get legal papers or Canada, and then I'll come back to doing, what I love to do, research and, brain science and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to let you become a tester. I'm going to help you out somehow to get you to the United States so you can go ahead and continue doing brain research and brain surgeries. So I helped to get him a job with help of my channel, with help of my supporters. He was able to get a job as a doctor here in Tashkent, not a tester, right? A doctor. And then we're trying to figure out how to get him to the United States, to like different places. I asked him, perhaps you lost your doctor's license. He goes, no, it's active. I said, well, perhaps you don't like, doing what you do. He goes, no, I love. And he did some research on human and computer interface and stuff like that. And, this guy is gold. Imagine how much time, how many efforts, how much money was spent on him to become a brain surgeon. He literally, when the mobilization started, he literally, was done with one of his shifts. He quit his job. He hopped into the car. He's with his wife. They're like in early 30s, mid 30s, I'd say. And she's also a doctor. She's a pediatrician. And they just drove to Kazakhstan and from Kazakhstan to Tashkent. This is one of the examples. I mean, for goodness sake, a brain surgeon. Okay, we have professors of different sciences here. We have tons of doctors. These people would contribute so much to any country. And we feel like we're stuck here. And many simply don't know what to do next. I apologize. I got a little long and emotional. Andre, would you please give your feedback on what you saw here in Tashkent on Sunday?
Yes, and Andre, I want to hear from you as well. You need to unmute yourself. You of course are familiar with your work with the United Nations Refugee Charter, and it seems to me that not only all three of you, but almost the entire male population of Russia who are not supportive of the war would qualify under the charter for people who have a well-founded fear of persecution, which is what allows people to become legal humanitarian refugees. But this isn't recognized in most places. There is not a move to recognize Russians as having a well-founded fear of persecution. It's an exception at the moment to the refugee charter. Do you think that's one of the things that needs to change? Or what needs to be done?
Definitely, I agree that people, here's the reality. Today, Russians are faced with a choice. You either, if the government wants you, you either need to go and fight in an illegal aggressive war, or you go to jail. You get a very severe prison sentence. And Russian prisons are not something that you would advise anyone to experience. And so this is the reality that people face. So if you refuse to fight, then you will suffer dearly for that. Probably you'll still be safer in prison than you will be on the front lines. Just from a purely rational calculation, it's probably still much safer to go to prison than to go to war.
Although they're now hauling people out of prison and sending them to war. So
yes, that's also happened. So that's, you can't end up in prison and then still, well, they can't really force people to fight. They kind of get people to, in quotes, volunteer.
Russian prisons at the moment sound like a humanitarian horror of their own.
Definitely. So that's something that needs to be recognized. So from a humanitarian point of view, that definitely needs to be recognized. Also, from a practical point of view, I hear this argument that you folks should stay in the country and change it. Well, the reality is that people today do not have the option of doing it. Even if you're, like we just listened to this great example, if you're a talented neurosurgeon, the question that people have is, okay, what can you do when you're in the country? And unfortunately, at this point, society has been, for so many years, it's a problem with society that people are not very capable of organizing. And I don't think, let's face it, I don't think that change in Russia will happen through the same formats that it happened in Ukraine. I don't think we will see a Maidan event on a Red Square, Moscow. That doesn't mean change will not happen. But realistically, I think that change is much more likely to happen through some initial cracks within the elite itself. And, the Russian society is not, I don't think it's in a state where we will see something similar to what we saw today. And I think that today, in the modern world, with all the possibilities of communication, if a person leaves the country physically, that does not necessarily mean that he has no say over what is happening inside the country that he left. Because he still has his relatives, his friends, he still has means of communication. And basically, yes, you're limited to some level, but you still can communicate. You still can share your opinion, your position. And in that sense, I don't think that we should, okay, let's take the most vivid example. We have some very courageous people like Alexei Navalny, Vladimir Kara-Murza, and some other really beacons of human rights advocates and heroes of our times, people that sacrificed, that put their life on the line, put themselves in tremendous danger, and still are, and no one knows, whether they will physically survive this ordeal. And obviously, these are people that we have probably all have deep respect for. But you sometimes think, is it worth sacrificing your life the way these people did? I think that personally, like Navalny could do much more if he would be somewhere outside the borders of Russia today. Yes, maybe he wouldn't have this there's image of almost a modern martyr that, put his life on the line. But he already did that so many times. So I think that we should recognize that leaving the country does not mean that someone, that he's out of the game. Not today. Maybe that was the case 100, 200 years ago, not today. And so I would disagree with this argument that, you shouldn't leave because by leaving you cannot be supportive of changes inside. I think you often might find cases where there are very rational arguments why people can do more for change in the country when they're personally in relative safety.
Yes.
In my case, I live in Kiev, and you can say, well, all safety is relative safety today. But in fact, I think I would be much safer. I am much safer today in Kiev than I would be if I would be in Moscow.
For sure, the Russian authorities can't get to you and seize you there. At the very minimum, in that regard, you're safer. Alexei Prokorenko, I should ask you. You're in Warsaw.
Yes,
please.
I just wanted to add to Konstantin's remark as well. Yes, I was very encouraged by what I saw in Tashkent, and it was quite amazing. You see all these people, and you don't know. You have. It's difficult to assess what were the motivations that people left with. So, you hear sometimes that people, that different people left the country. Some people might have been supportive of the war, but when they faced the personal risk of being mobilized, they decided that they don't want to take this risk. Okay. That might happen in some cases, but it was really quite interesting that I didn't feel that I need to argue with anyone who I met in Tashkent, at least. It seemed that people were really on the same wave in that sense. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because I had a long conversation with a woman that was there with 2 children. Actually came from Mariupol, from Ukraine. And, she told her story, and of course it's a horrendous story, And, she said that, finally decided to leave after her family of her friends was killed. The whole family was killed by a stray shell and something like that, And so So people end up there in very different, by different ways and different routes and different circumstances. I think that I totally agree with Constantine. There's great potential. And we still need to figure out, how can these people feel? How can they uh, realize their potential? How can they do more for the country that they're living in, for their own future, and for the country that they left as well?
Yes.
That's a difficult question, but we need to work with this.
Yes.
Just these people.
Thank you, Andre. I think if there's one thing I've learned over the years watching situations like this is that it's impossible to say that to divide people neatly into dissidents or political exiles and humanitarian refugees and economic migrants as three separate groups. Almost everybody combines some of those things because you have to make a living, you're in danger, perhaps your views are make you threatened and so on. These don't follow easy definitions. So Alexei, I'll let you have the last word because you're living in what's almost become sort of the capital of democratic Russia in exile right now. How well is that working, and what does need to be done to make things both safer and more functional as an exile community that hopefully someday will come back?
You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Well, it's got to be said that the parliament you're mentioning is not like a standing body. It just gathers now and then every 3 months, and it only brings together the former elected members of different assemblies, all the way from local town halls up to the federal parliament, mostly during the democratic years, the 1990s. Some of the former members of the parliament are today's immigrants, and so that structure it only gathers once in a while. Like it gathered in November, at the beginning of November when I was still in Istanbul, and it also gathered in February. So it's not like something not meaningful, but something that works permanently. The local Russian community is not big at all. The Prague community, the Vilnius community are much bigger. And here you only have relatively few people. Probably not all of them are active. I also I have the local language because I was in love with a Polish girl 20 years ago, and that's how I learned the language. It's a beautiful story, really. And so I'm in a better position here than I was in Turkey for many reasons. I'm seriously considering Poland as my as my new country. And I'm seriously willing to contribute to it as much as I can, work here, pay taxes, really care about the country, prove it as much as I can. It's already beautiful, but I have found Poland to be like Russia, which it would have been without Putin. And it's very close to, it's a Slavic country, it's close to Russia. I'm very grateful to it, and I hope I can contribute to its welfare, to its prosperity. Back to your question: what can be done to help Russian immigrants? I would be very careful with the words here. Immigrants would be the word that I describe myself with, because refugees are Ukrainians. I've met a lot of them here. Well, let me be a little bit a little bit frank about it. Not so modest, probably. I helped some Ukrainians here as much as I could, financially, psychologically. I tried to give them every kind of support, and they're refugees. They left their homes. Some of them have their homes bombed. They cannot return. They have nowhere to come back. My relatives back in Russia are in relative safety. They don't they have to fear about bombs falling on their heads. So let me be called an immigrant, not a refugee. So what can be done to help us Russian immigrants to survive, to find our ways in our new countries, maybe temporary countries, or maybe final destinations. Of course, over these 6 months that I've spent on the road, I've been thinking a lot about myself, about my fate, about everything that's related to me and people like me. And at some point I started to promote the idea. I think it was in Turkey already, but I think it was even better shaped and better honed when I came to Poland. The idea is quite simple. A person is not a passport, it's not a nationality, it's not an ethnicity or a gender or a race. It's a choice. It's a choice that every one of us makes, and it's a choice that eventually shapes every one of us. A set of choices, a sequence of choices that we make, and everyone I come across, everyone I talk with gets to hear that from me, that idea of a choice, of personal choice, because no one of us did have a choice where to be born, where to be raised. But finally, when the moment came, we did leave our country. We left our families. We left our whole life, which is not bad, because after 6 months, I can say that it was very very comforting and a very beautiful understanding that everything you need can be packed into 25 kilograms in your luggage, and plus 10 kilograms in the backpack. That's all you need, probably. In life, having bought things in Moscow, having tried to improve my life standard, I now understand that you need very little to survive. But if and I think that like Poland, countries like Poland, they understand this very deeply, because they don't issue tourist visas to Russians. So you cannot get a tourist visa. My family cannot come visit me. They have to find like detours, Hungary or France or Germany or whatever, to get a Schengen visa to enter the European Union, and then to come to Poland. Poland does not issue to tourist visas under any circumstances at all. So there is no postal communication between Poland and Russia. So I cannot send the postcards back home. I cannot send any gifts or whatever, or any clothes. I cannot receive anything from Russia as a gift, or some personal belongings, whatever. But as for the dissidents, Poland is most supportive. It's very open. It's very lenient, because I wouldn't call myself a very active dissident. Not anywhere close to Ilya Yashin, not anywhere close to Alexei Navalny, not anywhere comparable to them. But my personal struggle against Putin has helped me get a visa, and probably the idea of the personal choice, of the personal freedom of action, freedom of thought, regardless of the passport, if it could be promoted even more widely among other countries of the European Union, of North America. If it could be done, it would be probably the best help. So Russians can be treated not like enemies, but like also like hostages of the Putin's regime, like probably like kind of hostages and the people who also suffer, maybe not like Ukrainians, but who also sufferers of the Putin's regime.
Yes,
Thank
thank you for that concluding note. It's fair to say that we need to remember that Russia has also been invaded by Vladimir Putin, and with, you know, not missiles falling on its cities necessarily, but a big humanitarian toll, a huge lost opportunity. I think, Meta, we are running out of time, aren't we? I know.
We're over time. Konstantin, is this your enthusiasm, or you want to speak?
Very short, very short. I actually have a message, all right, I thought of what we all have said. To add to Alexei, you know, the refugees are so different. And most people here, we have families and we need a lot. We left a lot. We left our lives, our jobs, our, you know, real estate, we had invested into everything that we were building. I have 3 kids. My youngest is going to go to 1st grade in September. I have 2 teenage girls, and I have wife, and I have a couple of kids in Maine, and my ex-wife and my mom in Russia still. So I need a lot to support them. You know, it's not like I have a bag full of clothes and that's it, I'm gone. My situation is different, and many people here are just like that. All we're asking is accept us and give us opportunity to work, make honest living. I actually have a message. All right, I feel that most of us here in exile are angry and many are furious. Let us in and watch us unleash our power. We are, each one of us is an army of our own. And trust me, when we come to a country that would welcome us and give us an opportunity to call it new home, you watch us. We will self-organize and we will start helping our hijacked old country, Russia, in every single case imaginable. You just watch us. But the thing is, right now we are stuck and we lost. We don't know what to do. There's a huge force here. It's boiling in Tashkent, in Astana, in Almaty, in Yerevan, in Tbilisi, and all other countries. It's boiling.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Konstantin. And thanks to Doug. We are 15 minutes over time, but I want to say that we have only scratched the surface, because I want to keep talking to you guys. There is so much more to discuss. So what I want to suggest that we have at least 2 more conversations, and it might involve some other people as well. But the main thing is that I see a need to discuss 2 different issues. One is how to help you guys who are stuck and give you a route to a place where you can contribute what you want to do, as Konstantin and well, all of you have been mentioning, that you will be a huge asset to any country that wants to let you in, and we got to figure out a way to facilitate that. I'd like to have another conversation with somebody who can talk about the business end of how to change regulations and how to have influence over governmental decisions and so on. And the second line of conversation I'd like to have is, you know, when the discussion was, just because you left the country doesn't mean you have no influence in the country, and that you guys and all of the diaspora of Russians outside can, and I think will, have an influence on the future of Russia. But it would be very helpful if we could facilitate that with helping. I mean, there are going to be millions and millions of conversations like this about what the future of Russia should be, and conversations with political people and so on. So I think we could make a little contribution to that by having at least one more conversation. And I could imagine a whole series of conversations about how we can facilitate the development of a network of people who, as Constantine says, just watch us. I'm sure you don't need help, but
Mhm.
let's see if we can do something that will be helpful anyway. Would this be of
Mhm.
interest to all of you to get back together again with at least 2 more shows?
Absolutely. I would love
Absolutely.
to. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Not only it's been pleasure. I feel it's very important what we've done. So I would do that again and again and again.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'd like to look.
Most certainly.
Let's thank Meta, the great convener, for the logistical challenges of bringing this together. It's been a great privilege, really, to speak with the three of you, and I want what you said to get the widest possible audience. So I really will do what I can to get the word out. Because this was a really useful summary of the situation and the paradox faced by exile Russia. As I said earlier, democratic Russia in exile is and the things that the three of you are doing are brave and important. So I really look forward to hearing from you again.
Send you the URLs for this so that you can share them with everybody. I hope that people do. And by the way, we have a website called tosavetheworld.ca, and you can go there and have a conversation. So we can continue this discussion online as soon as I get this posted on the website, which will be a day or two. And go to the URL for this show, and go to the, let's say, the show on human rights. Let's call this a section on governance. So go to the page on governance and human rights, and there'll be a conversation there that you can continue just online until we meet again, which I hope will be soon. Bless you all, and it's God bless you all. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank